Y'all, Wizard101 just released a completely new pack. We absolutely need to talk about it. So some context here, right? Every time they do a world release, there's end of world gear that you can get by questing through, farming the final boss. It can get crazy. And then after a few months, they always put out a pack where you can basically just buy the gear for crowns. And the drop rates are really, really generous, but the pack is normally slightly on the expensive side. So now in the most recent update, they've released the Wallaru world pack, and a lot of people have been asking me, yo, is this worth looking into? Should I buy this? Like, what's the deal? So today, I'm gonna be opening just a couple because it is broke boy hours. But I did want to review the pack, talk about maybe how they've handled gear with this update, especially compared to previous worlds. We're opening it, yo, hey, y'all better not have ad block. Hey, yo. Oh, damn. Hey, yo, can I be honest? I was not expecting the dream water. Also, the pin. I don't know if this is a new thing, but I think pins are relatively new. Also, can we talk about the fact that I got the best rope of the game one pack? That's actually I'm on the storm. Got what I needed right away. All right, I only got one more. Listen, I'm sorry, y'all. I'm sorry. It's broke boy hours. Yo, not gonna lie to you. I actually really do like the dream water. It looks like you are pretty much guaranteed to get 6 dream water every single pack. And it also looks like you're guaranteed to get 1 to 2 pieces of Reaver Gear. However, it is not school specific. Now, let's talk about the Reaver Gear, right? This is probably the gear that you would be opening this pack for. Basically, it is a slight upgrade from the Aeon gear that we got at the end of Novus, which is a world before Wallaru. And a lot of people were actually criticizing that the Reaver Gear is not really a massive step up from the Aeon gear. It's probably the main reason why tons of people probably don't even have the Reaver Gear to begin with. When we're doing like a side-by-side, I would argue that the biggest thing that you could possibly want the Reaver Gear for is just the slight health increase and the item card. Now, these item cards, I think a lot of people act like these aren't like kind of nuts. I feel like these are why you would want to get this gear, right? If you're on a tanky school, more buffs is probably a really, really good thing. And if you're on like a high damage school like Storm, everyone could tell you this. An extra blade or two can go a long, long way when it comes to, like, you know, alpha striking a boss. That's what it's called, alpha striking. But I'd say the pack is actually really, really good for the dream water and the jewels. The dream water can be used for all kinds of things as long as you have the badge from the boss in order to, like, you know, basically craft it. Some of the most game-changing stuff, like Pierce jewels, can literally be crafted with dream water. And now we finally have a pack that gives us dream water without having to farm for it. Is it worth 599 crowns for the dream water alone? Probably not. But if you need the gear or jewels as with the dream water, it might actually be a good pack for that too. Now let's talk about the one thing that seems to be an issue for a lot of people with this pack. If you log on to Wiz, you might actually notice that you won't actually see the Wallaru World pack unless you've done one very, very specific thing. In order to unlock this pack, you still have to defeat the Malice in the Dreaming. Now, this is, I think, the real, like, divisive part for a lot of people. I think for a lot of people, their first experience with the entire dungeon was the one that they released in challenge mode, which is a lot harder. It's way less approachable. It's probably not team up friendly. You probably have to be in calls with people to do it. And the standard mode that they released after, which was supposed to be like a much more casual dreaming dungeon, the first version of it was actually still pretty hard. They have since nerfed it. I've done it recently. It's actually very, very doable. You could use potions. You could change your deck. You could like split up with people and you could actually speed run it. It takes like 20 minutes maximum. It is annoying, but if you know the cheats of the final boss, it is super doable, even with team up, I would argue. So is it valid that people have an issue that they have to get a badge in order to buy this pack? Sure, but it kind of makes sense, right? Why would you have end of the world gear when you haven't even finished the world? This is probably a good way to make sure that people that want the best gear in the game, especially for PvE, they're at least done with the world that they're getting the gear from. While that is a negative because, you know, it is slightly less accessible than maybe what people would want, I would argue that this is still a huge step up from previous worlds. In my opinion, the biggest takeaway from this is that let's say that you do not want to buy crowns, you don't want to buy packs in order to get this gear. The alternative isn't actually ridiculous amounts of grinding like it was in Novus and in previous worlds. Right, the Novus world pack is actually something that I would argue was straight up predatory. And I'm sorry to use words like that, but frankly, it was ridiculous. In order to get any of this Aeon gear, you had to randomly get it from the final boss. There was no pity system like there is in Wallaru. Right, Like, there's no reagents that you could use as you accumulate them to craft the stuff that you need, really. No matter how you looked at it, there were gear drops that you needed to get, and they were very, very random whether you got them or not. So a 600 crowns pack for a situation like that, in my opinion, was one of the worst decisions they've ever made. I think they've come a really, really long way in that year, because now, sure, it's still a 600 crowns pack. Sure, I mean, if you went through all the effort of farming it, it probably kind of sucks a little bit that someone can just buy that, you know, buy their way into whatever you have. But at least it's not like an unreasonable amount of grinding that requires weeks and weeks of, like, you know, effort and also luck in order for you to get what you want. And unlike the Novus pack, it looks like there's some really nice bonus items like pins and dream water that you could also justify buying the pack for. So in my opinion, a much, much better design pack than previous times they've done. My personal issue with this is that this does not include the stalker gear that I would argue you would want for PvP. If y'all don't know, right, if you have done the Nightmare Dungeon, you probably do know this, but like there's basically 2 sets of gear that drops from the Nightmare Dungeon. There's what I would argue is the really PvE oriented setup. It just maximizes your damage, your pierce, and your offense. You don't get shads though, but there's also a slightly more defensive set that does give shadow rating, which is a very, very important PvP stat. In order to craft stalker gear, you do need to defeat the Malice 15 times, and you have to get the Reaver Gear or craft the Reaver Gear that corresponds with it, right? So for me to craft my Storm Stalker robe, I need a badge, which involves 15 defeats, and I also need the actual, like, original Reaver armor, which I could craft or get lucky enough to just get dropped. In terms of specifically a barrier of entry for PvP, that's a pretty big one. I feel like this pack could have solved it. I think they're doing the classic thing where they've done this with Novus, where there was, if you didn't know, there's a Novus World pack, and there's also a Novus Explorers pack. Ooh. I assume that this is what's, like, maybe there's literally just going to be a Wallaru Explorers pack, and it's going to drop the Stalker gear. I kind of wish they didn't do this, and rather had a way of maybe guaranteeing that you got, you know, from the new world pack anyways. It'd be nice if you could guarantee get a Stalker set and a Reaver set. Doesn't have to be school specific. I think that would make it an infinitely better pack because it addresses PvP and PvE. But also there's this argument that if you have too much stuff in a pack, the drop tables do get diluted. So I don't think it's like, you know, King's Isle bad, this pack stupid, money grab, right? I feel like it's a very convenient argument to make. Overall, I think this pack really does represent a lot of growth. It's actually a pretty well-designed pack. Honestly, if you're not feeling like farming for the gear, probably a great pack to open. I would love to hear y'all's opinions on this. Do you guys agree with me that, like, it feels so different from Novus that it's almost, like, hard to believe? And if you could improve this pack, what would you do to it? Because I feel like, you know, there's maybe a little bit of room. As always, drop a like if you enjoyed. Leave us a review. I just wanted to let people know about this pack because it was a part of yesterday's update, which was kind of huge. So if you didn't know about it, you know about it now. I'll see y'all soon, man. If somebody hasn't told you you're awesome today, they doing something wrong. Stay awesome. See y'all soon. And yeah.